Waitress gets fired after feeding a homeless man, is shocked when he reveals his identity. Cindy is a waitress from Canada that had the entire course of her life drastically changed the day she decided to feed the homeless man who lived near her workplace. Cindy worked as a waitress in a restaurant in the middle of the town and walked the same route to work every day. She has been seeing that homeless man sitting in the same spot for a while. No matter what the weather was like, he always sat in the same spot with a lonely look in his eyes. Despite his lonely looks, the man was always in a good mood and would smile at everyone who passed by him. All he wanted was to have a conversation with someone. He never even asked anyone for money. Cindy noticed his behavior and thought to herself that this was very admirable of him. Even though some rude walkers would laugh at him or toss objects at him, he'd always keep his smile and go on about his day. The man was always so kind to everyone, and it was time someone gave him something nice in return. Cindy hated seeing him being treated like this and decided to do something about it. Cindy was a waitress herself, but her ambition was to one day work as a cook in the kitchen. She was even having courses to become a chef, which she paid for with her intensive work as a waitress. Cindy worked at a 5-star restaurant, and the food there was far from being affordable, let alone cheap. Guests would spend a few $100s a night, which only made the contrast between the people in and those out huge. While she served rich people there, she would look at the homeless man with nothing but even a day's meal only a few meters away. She decided to take action. She just had to try and do this unseen, because if her boss found out about her plans, she could lose her job. Her major plan consisted of her stealing some of the high-quality food in their fridge to make a decent meal for the homeless man. However, she was risking her job if her boss was ever to find out. Even though she was extremely worried things would go sideways, Cindy still carried on with her plan. Cindy managed to get into the freezer unseen. Once she got to the door, she started looking for food that wouldn't be missed and eventually took around 20 ingredients. Just enough for her meal. But she was running out of luck when she heard a loud knock on the freezer door while she was still inside. The chef realized that someone was in the fridge and came to check for himself. It was strictly forbidden for anyone but him to get there. All the other kitchen staff always had to bring someone with them when they wanted to go into the cold room. Cindy had to get out of the cold room as quickly as possible, but she had nowhere to run to. Her eyes were tearing and blood froze in her veins. Her career and any dreams of becoming a chef vanished. The feeling of despair and panic crept over her as she realized she had to give up her passion and the only thing that kept her going through long shifts, the culinary world. Cindy leaned against the back wall to hide. Unlike what she thought, her luck wasn't really running out. The wall Cindy was leaning against was of poor quality. As she leaned against it, it collapsed and Cindy fell through, ending up in the hallway of the restaurant. No one had seen her fall as it was in a sheltered area where mostly the waitresses walked. Cindy caught her breath and put her tray in front of the hole in the wall and managed to escape with all the ingredients she had taken. She was now finally able to continue what she first set her mind into. The moment she got home, Cindy went straight to work and spent more than 2 hours in the kitchen cooking a delicious meal for the homeless man she's been feeling sorry for all of those days. When she could finally carry out her plan and give her home-cooked meal to the homeless person, she was overjoyed. Not only had she provided him with a warm meal, something he probably hadn't had in a while, but she also gave some money to allow him to buy some more things if he needed it. The man was at a loss for words at her kindness, as such acts weren't something he was familiar with. Cindy decided to offer the homeless person warm home-cooked meals for the rest of the week. The man thought the meals were delicious. Cindy and the man were both overjoyed, until one day, her chef showed up at her door. Cindy was stoned when she saw the chef standing at the door and knew immediately that she had been caught. She hesitated to open the door, but he had already seen her and she had no choice but to let him in. The chef was furious, to say the least. When he found the tray in front of the broken wall, he knew immediately that it belonged to her. His fury got worse when he saw the video footage of her stealing goods from the fridge. He was yelling at her with a rage she's never seen before. There was little time or space for Cindy to say anything. The chief yelled, "You're fired," when the front door opened. While her boss was raging, Cindy saw her entire future pass in front of her eyes. Without a job, she could never pay for culinary studies or even get any job in the business with his reference. The day after being fired, Cindy walked past her former workplace. She peeked through the window, and a feeling of grief overcame her. When she started to walk away, she saw the homeless person sitting in his usual spot. As always, he was waiting for someone to talk to that day. Cindy decided to have a chat with him and just forget about everything going on in her life. The homeless person asked her why she looked so devastated and bleak, and she explained the situation to him in teary eyes. "That's horrible. They can't just fire such culinary talent, can they? This is truly a great loss for the entire culinary world. I do not agree with this, and am going to put a stop to it," was his reaction. The man stormed into the packed restaurant. The chef rushed at the man when he saw him. Cindy had followed, and the chef tried to kick them both out of the restaurant. "Leave my restaurant at once, you dirty old man. Your kind doesn't belong in a restaurant," the chef yelled at the homeless man without blinking an eye, not knowing that he'd regret this for the rest of his life. When the chef was done shouting, the man only laughed softly. "You really don't remember who I am anymore, do you?" the homeless person asked the chef. Then he took off his dirty coat and a neat suit appeared from under it. It seemed as if the man had undergone an entire transformation in 10 seconds. He was now a wealthy man, after he's been a homeless man with ragged clothes. When the man saw Cindy's look of amazement and disbelief, he decided to explain to her what was going on. "The man, I am not homeless. I am a food critic and rate the quality of the menu and service. A few weeks ago, I decided to eat here for another review, and this restaurant has become so much worse. The service was very good, but the food was way below par, and that is this tyrant's fault. So I decided to do something about it. Last week, I bought most of the shares of this restaurant. That's why I am the new owner of this restaurant. Because my last visit was disappointing, I decided to keep an eye on things from a distance. It quickly became very clear to me that this restaurant isn't managed well." Then the man turned to the chef. "Your dishes are barely edible. That's how gross they are. You're fired." The man then turned to Cindy. "Cindy, the food you've made for me over the past few days was innovative, deliciously flavored, and the best I've eaten in years. Now that a position is open as a chef, I was wondering if you would be interested in the job." Cindy couldn't believe her eyes. She was overwhelmed with all sorts of emotions. She couldn't believe what had just happened. Was it all real? Or was it just a dream she was having? Before she could even process what was going on, she shouted out loud, "Yes." Cindy was finally having the job of her life, working as a chef in a restaurant she was fired from barely a week prior. Never underestimate the power of kindness. Sometimes the one who will benefit the most of it is you.